The stars shimmered like scattered diamonds across the dark sky as the spaceship Odyssey approached Zephyria. From a distance, the planet looked calm, its surface a swirl of emerald forests, silver rivers, and jagged mountains glowing faintly under the twin suns. Yet beneath this peaceful view lay secrets older than any alien civilization. Captain Ethan Drake, a human explorer with a reputation for calm thinking and quick problem-solving, stood on the observation deck. His hazel eyes traced the planet below, scanning every ridge and valley. Unlike many of his alien companions, he did not rush into action. His fingers tapped lightly on the railing as he considered what awaited them. The crew behind him, a collection of aliens from 5 different worlds, chattered nervously. Each species had its own unique strengths. The tall, blue-skinned Realnars were strong and agile, built for climbing mountains and lifting heavy objects. The Cathari, small and lithe, excelled in intelligence and strategy, their 6 eyes constantly analyzing every detail. The massive winged Orcs were powerful flyers, capable of feats of strength that most beings could not imagine. Together, they were confident that if the ancient sword truly existed, it would be theirs. Legends had long circulated about the Sword of Zephyria. It was said to be an artifact of unimaginable power, forged by a civilization that had vanished thousands of years ago. Many had tried to lift it, but none had succeeded. Rumors spoke of curses, traps, and impossible tests. The sword seemed to choose its wielder, but no alien had ever passed the test. As the Odyssey descended through Zephyria's atmosphere, the team marveled at the lush forests stretching below them. Strange, glowing plants dotted the landscape, and massive crystal formations sparkled like natural towers. Yet in the center of a vast clearing stood the ruins of a temple, overgrown with vines and moss. And there, within the temple's inner sanctum, the sword rested on a pedestal of black stone, faintly glowing with a soft blue light. The aliens were eager to move. "I will lift it first," said Xylar, a Realnar warrior, his long arms stretching toward the ship's exit. "Strength is what this sword respects." Ethan shook his head gently. "It's not just about strength," he said calmly. "Legends always exaggerate, but there's usually a reason why only certain people succeed. We need to understand it first." The aliens snorted. Cathari scholars murmured among themselves, clearly impatient. "Understand it?" One of them hissed. "We do not need understanding. We need action. No one can resist power that belongs to them." Ethan's eyes remained fixed on the temple. He had read about civilizations that used tests like these not for power, but to measure character. Something about the glowing inscriptions around the pedestal suggested the sword's weight might change depending on the one who approached it. He did not share this observation yet, knowing that speculation alone would not prepare them. The team disembarked, stepping carefully onto the soft, mossy ground. The air was fragrant with the scent of alien flora, sweet and slightly metallic. Light shimmered off the crystal formations, casting moving reflections across the temple walls. The aliens moved quickly, each eager to prove themselves. Xylar was the first to approach the pedestal. He stretched his massive arms over the sword, grasping its hilt. The others watched, some with excitement, others with impatience. Slowly, he tried to lift it. The sword did not budge. He grunted, exerting all his strength, but it remained firmly in place. His face reddened and he pressed harder, but to no avail. "Impossible," he roared. It refuses me." The Cathari scholar stepped forward, their 6 eyes scanning the pedestal. "Perhaps it is not meant for brute strength," they said, but there was a hint of doubt in their voice. Even they had never seen a challenge that could completely resist a Realnar's strength. One by one, the aliens tried. The winged Orcs flexed their wings and leapt high, attempting to bring all their power down onto the sword. Still it did not move. The Cathari tried precision techniques, calculating angles, adjusting grips, and testing leverage. Still, nothing worked. Ethan watched silently. He noticed something subtle. Whenever an alien strained to lift the sword, the glowing symbols on the pedestal pulsed faintly, almost as if reacting to the struggle. When they relaxed, the symbols dimmed. There was a rhythm, a test. The sword was alive in its own way, waiting for the right approach. Hours passed. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The aliens, frustrated and weary, gathered around Ethan. "Human," Xyler said almost begrudgingly. "You may try, but do not expect success. We have tried everything. You are weak compared to us." Ethan nodded respectfully. "I understand. I will try, but not with force. Sometimes the strongest path is not the most obvious one." He walked toward the sword with calm confidence. His steps were deliberate, measured, not rushed. He studied the inscriptions around the pedestal, taking note of the shapes and the faint pulsing light. He crouched slightly, examining the hilt and the weight of the air around it. The aliens whispered among themselves, doubtful and curious. "What is he doing?" one Orcs muttered. "He is not even touching it yet." Ethan placed his hands lightly on the hilt. He did not grip it with force. Instead, he focused. He took a deep breath, centering himself. He could feel the energy from the sword, faint but distinct. Unlike the aliens who had only seen it as an object to lift, he sensed it as a presence, as if it were aware of who approached it. The sword pulsed softly under his touch. Ethan adjusted his stance, aligning his body with the energy flow. He pushed gently, testing the weight but also testing himself, measuring courage, patience, and focus. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the sword began to rise. The aliens froze, their eyes widening in disbelief. None of them had seen it budge. The sword's glow brightened, responding to Ethan's calm determination. He adjusted again, steadying, his breath feeling the weight not just in his hands but in his mind. "Impossible," one Cathari whispered. But Ethan did not think about impossibility. He thought about understanding, about respect for the ancient weapon, and about patience. The sword lifted higher, almost floating, guided by a force that only a human seemed able to understand. By the time it was fully upright, Ethan stood firm, holding it steadily. The air around him shimmered, the glowing symbols on the pedestal shining brighter than ever. The aliens could hardly believe their eyes. The sword, which no alien had lifted in centuries, now rested in the hands of a human. A hush fell over the clearing. Xyler's jaw dropped. The Orcs flapped their wings nervously. Even the Cathari seemed stunned, their 6 eyes wide with wonder. Ethan lowered the sword carefully, setting it back on the pedestal. He did not boast. He only smiled faintly, knowing that this was not a victory of strength, but of understanding. The energy of the sword seemed to acknowledge him, pulsing softly, almost like a nod of approval. The aliens gathered closer, curiosity overtaking frustration. "How?" Xyler asked. Ethan explained calmly. "This sword was not made for strength alone. It tests balance, patience, and courage. It responds to respect, not force. I did not lift it with power. I lifted it with understanding." The aliens looked at each other, a mix of awe and disbelief in their expressions. No one had expected a human to succeed. Humans were known as curious and brave, but few had imagined they could accomplish something so many had failed to do. As the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the forest, Ethan stood beside the pedestal. Around him, the aliens began to reconsider what they knew about humans. Perhaps they were stronger than expected, not in muscle, but in mind and spirit. The night crept across Zephyria, the stars glittering above. Somewhere in the distance, the forest whispered. The ancient sword pulsed, and a human explorer had taken the first step into a story that would change the way the universe saw his species. Ethan looked at the stars, feeling the weight of the moment. The journey was only beginning. The sword had chosen to reveal a secret, and with it, humans were about to discover their place among the stars in ways no alien could imagine. The night on Zephyria was alive with soft sounds. Strange insects chirped with luminous wings, and the forest whispered under the twin moons. Ethan Drake sat near the ancient temple, staring at the sword's pedestal. Its soft blue glow had dimmed, but he could still feel its energy pulsing faintly. This was no ordinary weapon. Every instinct told him it was a test, and he had only begun to understand it. Around him, the aliens had gathered in a semicircle. Their expressions were a mixture of awe, skepticism, and curiosity. Xylar, the Rilnar warrior, still looked furious. He had tried to lift the sword countless times, and each failure had bruised not only his body but also his pride. The Orcs flapped their wings slowly, uncertain how to react, while the Cathari whispered among themselves in rapid clicks and hums. Ethan rose and walked toward the wall of the temple, where ancient inscriptions glimmered faintly in the moonlight. He touched the carvings gently, tracing the lines with his fingers. Symbols of strange creatures, unknown constellations, and intricate patterns surrounded the pedestal. To the aliens, they were merely decorations. To Ethan, they were clues. He muttered softly to himself, "The sword isn't about strength. It's about balance, focus, courage." The aliens had gathered behind him, watching silently. The Cathari leaned forward, 6 eyes wide with curiosity. "You think the sword responds to intelligence?" one asked in a low tone. Ethan smiled faintly. "Not intelligence alone. It responds to understanding. Whoever can read its patterns, whoever can respect its history, may succeed. Strength alone is useless." Xylar snorted. "History? Respect? I am a warrior. We warriors do not need riddles, we need power." Ethan turned to him calmly. "And yet power without wisdom fails. I have seen many civilizations fall because they could not understand what they held." The aliens paused, sensing truth in his words. The air of the temple seemed to shift, almost as if the sword itself was listening. Ethan could feel a faint vibration beneath the ground. It was subtle, but it confirmed his suspicion. The sword reacted to intention, not force. Over the next few hours, Ethan explored the temple carefully. He discovered small stone plates, each inscribed with different symbols, connected to the sword by thin lines carved into the floor. One plate glowed softly when he stepped near it, and another pulsed when he touched the pedestal lightly. It was a network of energy, a test designed to measure more than muscle. The aliens watched silently as he worked. They did not interfere, though some whispered doubts. "Why does he examine stones?" asked one Orcs. "Just lift it. That is the way of warriors." Ethan shook his head. "The way of warriors is not always the way of success," he replied softly. "The sword is ancient. It was made by a civilization far older than any of yours. It is alive in its own way. It tests qualities you may not value." He sat cross-legged near the pedestal, closing his eyes. For hours he focused, studying his own thoughts and breathing steadily. Slowly, he felt a connection to the sword, a faint energy that seemed to respond to his calm, respectful mind. He noticed the weight of the pedestal itself, the way the air moved around the glowing symbols, the soft vibration beneath his feet. Suddenly, a pulse of light shot from the pedestal, and Ethan opened his eyes. The sword shimmered brighter than before, as if acknowledging his observation. The aliens gasped. None of them had seen the sword respond in this way. All of their attempts had been raw and impatient. "What is he doing?" Xylar asked in a low growl, tension in his voice. Ethan stood slowly. "I am learning it. You cannot force it. You must listen, understand, and respect. That is how it reveals itself." The Cathari leaned closer, analyzing every detail. "Perhaps he sees what we cannot," one murmured. "Perhaps humans have a perspective different from ours." Ethan nodded to himself. He knew that each step mattered. Lifting the sword would not be a single act. It would be a combination of understanding its energy, balancing courage with caution, and using intuition to guide his movements. As he studied, a faint breeze stirred the temple, carrying the scent of alien flora. Ethan noticed tiny grooves in the pedestal that aligned with the inscriptions on the stone plates. He traced them with his fingers and realized that the sword's weight seemed to respond to patterns of alignment. He explained softly to the aliens, who leaned in despite themselves. "Watch closely. It is not about lifting, it is about timing, focus, and connection. The sword is a mirror. It reflects the qualities of whoever approaches." Hours turned into night. Ethan sat in meditation, watching how his own calm focus seemed to influence the sword. Small pulses of light followed his gaze. The aliens whispered quietly, watching with awe. The Rilnar warrior, Xylar, struggled to understand. "Strength alone is useless," he murmured. Ethan smiled faintly. "Strength without understanding is like a river with no direction. It has power, but it cannot shape the world." Suddenly, the temple floor beneath the sword vibrated softly. Ethan rose slowly, sensing a test ahead. The inscriptions glowed, brighter as if inviting him to interact. He placed his hands lightly on the hilt. This time he did not attempt to lift it. He simply aligned his movements with the energy, moving slowly, adjusting posture, breathing steadily. The sword responded. It shifted slightly, pulsing in resonance with him. The aliens gasped again. They had never witnessed this. It was not strength, not clever tricks, but a harmony between human and artifact. Ethan stepped back, observing. He noticed that whenever he relaxed and focused on balance and patience, the sword responded more. Whenever he rushed or thought of force, the sword resisted. It was a lesson in mind over muscle, in calm determination over brute force. The aliens were silent. Even Xylar, proud and stubborn, seemed uncertain. He could not deny what he had seen. The human before them was not using strength. He was using something else: intuition, understanding, and respect. Ethan continued to study. He realized that the inscriptions hinted at previous wielders, not through strength, but through courage, wisdom, and patience. Perhaps the ancient civilization had designed this test knowing that only a being capable of balance and focus could carry the sword. Night deepened. Stars shimmered overhead. Ethan sat near the pedestal, not attempting to lift the sword yet, but preparing himself. He knew that success would not come from impatience. He must wait for the right moment, connect fully, and act with intention. The aliens, despite their impatience, began to understand the lesson in front of them. Humans, they realized, might approach challenges differently, valuing understanding as much as power. They watched as Ethan remained calm, respectful, and patient, qualities that seemed to influence the ancient weapon in ways they could not comprehend. Finally, Ethan rose, stretching slightly. "The sword tests more than strength," he said, gently. "It tests patience, courage, understanding, and respect. These are qualities worth more than brute force." The aliens murmured among themselves. The Cathari scholar, usually so analytical, looked thoughtful. "Perhaps humans are different in ways we underestimate," they said quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. He knew the time to attempt lifting the sword had not yet come, but understanding. It was the first step. The sword was alive with ancient energy, and he had begun to read its patterns, feel its rhythm, and sense its tests. As the twin moons rose high above Zephyria, casting silver light across the clearing, Ethan stood beside the pedestal. The sword glowed faintly, as if acknowledging his presence and patience. Around him the aliens watched, their previous arrogance replaced with curiosity and, in some cases, respect. Ethan gazed at the sword, knowing the journey was only beginning. The challenge ahead was not merely to lift it, but to prove worth beyond strength, to align mind and spirit with the ancient forces of Zephyria, and he was ready. The night on Zephyria was silent, save for the soft hum of the sword. Somewhere in the distant forests, creatures of the alien world watched, their glowing eyes reflecting the stars. And for the first time in centuries, the sword seemed alive, not with challenge but with anticipation, waiting for a being who could understand it fully. Ethan sat once more, closing his eyes, feeling the rhythm of the sword and the energy of the planet. The aliens, for all their strength and intelligence, could only watch and learn. Humans, he knew, had a different kind of power, a power born of patience, understanding, and courage. And soon that power would be tested in ways even the aliens could not imagine. The twin moons of Zephyria hung low in the sky, casting a soft silver light across the clearing. The temple ruins seemed to glow faintly under their beams, as if they had been waiting for this very moment for centuries. Ethan Drake stood quietly. Before the sword's pedestal, his hands folded calmly, his eyes tracing the inscriptions one last time. Around him, the alien crew gathered, watching closely. Xylar, the Rilnar warrior, shifted his massive arms impatiently, his pride still smarting from repeated failure. The Orcs fluttered their wings uneasily, as though the air itself had become heavier with anticipation. The Cathari whispered among themselves in their clicking language, their six eyes trained on every movement Ethan made. "You are wasting time," Xylar growled. "Just lift it. That is the way of warriors." Ethan shook his head gently. "It is not about rushing," he replied softly. "It is about focus, balance, and understanding. The sword will respond to those who respect it, not those who demand it." He took a slow, deep breath. Closing his eyes briefly, he centered himself. He recalled the patterns he had studied in the temple, the faint pulses of energy from the pedestal, and the subtle alignment of the stone plates surrounding it. He felt the rhythm of the sword, almost like a heartbeat beneath his hands. The aliens watched in stunned silence. None had ever approached the sword in this way. Most had tried brute force, relying on their natural strength or intelligence, but Ethan was doing something completely different. He was listening, learning, becoming one with the challenge rather than trying to overpower it. Ethan reached out slowly, placing his hands lightly on the hilt. His fingers did not grip hard, they hovered, touching only enough to sense the sword's energy. The blade glimmered faintly under his touch, and for a brief moment it seemed to tremble in recognition. Xylar's jaw dropped. "Impossible," he muttered under his breath. Ethan adjusted his stance, spreading his feet slightly for better balance. He bent his knees just a little, keeping his core steady. He did not push with all his might. Instead, he aligned his movements with the natural energy of the sword, matching its subtle vibrations. His mind focused entirely on balance and connection, not strength. A faint pulse of light shot from the pedestal. The symbols carved into the stone walls glowed brighter, illuminating Ethan's face. The sword responded, shifting slightly under his touch. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it rose a few inches from the pedestal. The aliens gasped. No one had ever seen the sword move even slightly. The Rilnar warrior's arms dropped, slack with disbelief. "How?" he whispered, unable to finish the sentence. Ethan did not speak. He continued to breathe steadily, adjusting his position minutely with each pulse of energy. He felt the sword resisting sometimes, then easing as he maintained focus. The glow on the pedestal seemed to brighten with each moment, as if approving his approach. The Orcs flapped their wings softly, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Even the Cathari scholars, who prided themselves on analyzing every pattern, were silent, unable to explain what a human had achieved where countless aliens had failed. Slowly, inch by inch, the sword rose higher. Ethan's calm determination guided it. He did not strain. He did not push beyond reason. He moved in perfect harmony with the energy, respecting the ancient weapon and the legacy it represented. Xylar stepped closer, still doubtful. It cannot be human," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of frustration and awe. Ethan opened his eyes slightly, looking at the blade. "It is not about who you are," he said softly. "It is about how you approach it. Strength alone does not lift this sword. Understanding does." Another pulse of light surged from the pedestal, and the sword hovered fully upright, its tip pointing toward the sky. Ethan held it steadily, feeling the weight, not as a burden, but as a flow of energy aligned with his focus. The symbols on the pedestal glowed intensely, casting dancing patterns across the temple walls. The aliens could hardly breathe. The sword, which had resisted their combined strength for centuries, now floated in the hands of a single human. Even the strongest among them, Xylar, felt his pride crumble. He had underestimated humans completely. Ethan's eyes scanned the inscriptions again. He understood now that the sword was not meant for forceful conquest. It had been crafted to test qualities that aliens often overlooked: patience, respect, courage, and understanding. This was not a victory of muscle. It was a victory of insight. Slowly, Ethan lowered the sword back onto the pedestal. He did not drop it. He did not slam it down. He placed it carefully, reverently, as though acknowledging its age and power. The glow dimmed slightly but remained steady, as if content with his handling. The aliens murmured among themselves, their earlier arrogance replaced with awe and, in some cases, confusion. How did he do it? Asked one Orcs, wings trembling. Ethan turned to face them. The sword responds to more than strength, he explained. It measures balance, patience, courage, and understanding. Those who rush or push without respect cannot lift it. It is not a test of power. It is a test of mind and spirit. The Cathari scholar stepped forward, clicking rapidly in their language. Your species, humans. Perhaps we underestimated you. You approach challenges differently, with insight and courage that others lack. Ethan nodded. Every species has its strengths. Humans have curiosity, patience, and adaptability. We do not always rely on brute force. Sometimes the mind is stronger than any muscle. Xylar's massive shoulders slumped. Then all our strength was wasted, he muttered, though he did not sound bitter, only thoughtful. The lesson was clear. Raw power was not always the key to success. Ethan looked around at the alien crew. This is more than a sword, he said quietly. It is a reminder. True strength comes from understanding, respect, and courage. Those who act recklessly may fail, but those who observe, learn, and act with purpose may succeed. The aliens, even those who had mocked him before, began to nod. Slowly, they started to see a truth they had ignored for centuries. Humans, with all their apparent weaknesses, could achieve feats no alien could imagine, not through violence, but through wisdom, patience, and insight. Ethan stood tall, the sword's energy still pulsing softly in the temple. The air seemed lighter now, almost celebratory. Even the forest surrounding them seemed to whisper approval, the glowing plants reflecting the sword's glow. He looked at Xylar, who finally approached and placed a hand on the pedestal. Perhaps we can learn from this, he said, his voice quieter than usual. There was respect in his tone now, a recognition of the human's unique abilities. Ethan smiled faintly. That is the first step, he said. Understanding and respect come before action. Only then can true strength be revealed. The night deepened, and the twin moons rose higher, casting silver light over the clearing. For the first time, the aliens saw a human achieve something they had thought impossible. It was not just a moment of personal triumph for Ethan. It was a moment that would change how humans were seen across the stars. As he stepped back from the pedestal, Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction. The sword had accepted his approach, acknowledging patience and courage, but he also knew that lifting it was only the beginning. The knowledge it guarded, the secrets of the ancient civilization, and the lessons for the future were yet to come. The aliens gathered closer, whispering among themselves. Some were in awe, some were contemplative, and a few were clearly humbled. Humans, they realized, were not just curious or brave. They were capable of understanding an insight that many civilizations lacked. Ethan looked out across Zephyria, sensing the vast potential of this planet and the sword itself. The night was calm, but beneath it lay ancient energy, waiting to reveal more secrets. And Ethan knew he was ready. The human mind, patient and courageous, could uncover mysteries that no alien could fathom. As the stars glittered above, Ethan, Drake stood quietly, the sword's faint glow reflecting in his eyes. Around him, the aliens observed in silence, finally beginning to grasp the extraordinary capabilities of humans, not in raw strength, but in mind, heart, and spirit. The challenge had begun, and the universe would never see humans the same way again. The soft glow of the sword bathed the temple in a calm blue light. The air smelled faintly of alien flora, sweet and metallic, and the night around Zephyria seemed alive with whispers. Ethan Drake stood near the pedestal, breathing steadily, his eyes tracing the patterns carved into the ancient stone. The sword had been lifted, and its test acknowledged him, but the journey was far from over. The alien crew gathered closer, their expressions a mix of curiosity, awe, and lingering skepticism. Xylar, the Rilnar warrior, flexed his massive arms, still struggling to understand how a human could succeed where he had failed. The Orcs tilted their wings nervously, while the Cathari whispered among themselves in their clicking language, their 6 eyes wide with wonder. Ethan placed the sword back on the pedestal, its soft glow dimming slightly as if resting. He turned to the aliens. "The sword is not just about lifting," he explained. "It is a key to the knowledge and history hidden in this temple. The true test is not strength, but understanding and courage." Xylar frowned. "Knowledge, history. I am a warrior. We do not care for such things." Ethan smiled faintly. "Understanding history is how civilizations survive. Strength alone cannot save a world." He moved carefully toward the back of the temple, where a large stone wall was carved with intricate symbols. He touched the wall lightly, and the sword on the pedestal pulsed in response. Slowly, a section of the wall began to shift, revealing a hidden doorway. Dust fell, and the alien stepped back in surprise. "What is this?" whispered one of the Orcs. Ethan gestured toward the doorway. "This temple holds the knowledge of a civilization far older than any of ours. The sword is a key. It responds to respect and understanding, and in return, it opens doors that cannot be forced." The aliens exchanged glances. Even Xylar looked thoughtful, a hint of humility in his posture. He had always believed in raw strength as the ultimate test, yet here was proof that intelligence, patience, and courage could achieve what muscle alone could not. Ethan stepped into the doorway, the sword still hovering faintly on the pedestal. He traced the walls of the hidden chamber, noticing carvings depicting a thriving civilization, advanced technology, and beings working in harmony with their environment. The energy of the sword seemed to guide him, pulsing gently as he touched the ancient symbols. "This civilization," Ethan said quietly, "valued wisdom and courage above all else. They built this temple as a test for those who would seek their legacy. The sword is a guardian, not a weapon. It ensures that only those worthy can access the knowledge." The aliens watched silently, realizing that lifting the sword was only the first part of the challenge. The temple's secrets were vast, and humans, it seemed, could navigate them in ways the aliens could not. Ethan approached a large stone panel at the center of the chamber. Its carvings depicted a map of Zephyria, with lines connecting locations across the planet. He traced the lines with his fingers and noticed that the sword's energy reacted more strongly when he aligned it with certain points on the map. "This sword is not only a key," Ethan said, "it is also a guide. It reveals locations where knowledge and resources are hidden. It responds to focus, courage, and understanding." The aliens leaned in closer, their curiosity growing. "You mean it can show us where to find things?" asked one Cathari scholar. Ethan nodded. "Yes, but it is not magic. It is technology, energy, and wisdom combined. Those who approach it with arrogance or force cannot unlock its secrets. Those who approach it with patience, courage, and respect can." Xylar stepped forward, his massive frame towering over Ethan. "Then, humans are different," he said slowly, the words hesitant but respectful. "We never realized. Strength alone is not enough." Ethan smiled. "Every species has its strengths. Humans have patience, courage, and adaptability. These qualities may seem small, but they allow us to understand challenges that others cannot." As he spoke, the sword pulsed again, and a section of the floor slid open, revealing a hidden chamber below. Ethan descended carefully with the aliens following cautiously. Inside, the room was filled with ancient artifacts, scrolls, and devices. The walls glowed faintly, covered with inscriptions in a language long forgotten. The energy of the sword resonated strongly here, as if guiding Ethan toward the most important discoveries. "This is incredible," whispered one of the Orcs. "No alien has ever seen this." Ethan nodded. "It was not meant for us alone. It was meant for those who could prove their worth. And it seems the test has chosen to reveal itself to someone willing to understand, not just to dominate." He examined a device resembling a console, ancient but remarkably intact. Touching it lightly, he activated a projection of the planet showing not only locations but also details about resources, energy flows, and hidden dangers. The aliens stared, realizing that the sword and the temple together held knowledge far beyond anything they had imagined. "This is not just a weapon," Ethan said. "It is a legacy. It ensures that civilizations can learn from the past, and that only those who are worthy can access it. The true strength lies in wisdom, courage, and understanding." The aliens were silent for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Xylar, normally brash and impatient, looked at Ethan with newfound respect. "You humans, you are capable of more than we thought. Not because you are stronger, but because you see things differently." Ethan smiled. "Perspective matters. Strength is important, yes, but without understanding it is incomplete. The sword tests qualities that are often overlooked: patience, courage, and respect. These are what truly define worth." He guided the aliens through the chamber, showing them the inscriptions and devices, explaining the patterns and how they connected to the sword's energy. Slowly, the aliens began to grasp the lessons. They realized that lifting the sword was only the beginning. True mastery required insight, observation, and courage to act thoughtfully. Hours passed as Ethan explored. Guided by the sword's subtle energy, he activated hidden mechanisms that revealed more chambers, each filled with knowledge, tools, and records of the ancient civilization. The aliens followed, awed by what they had never imagined existed. "This changes everything," murmured one Cathari scholar. "Humans approach challenges with a combination of patience, courage, and insight. We underestimated your kind." Ethan nodded. "It is not about being better. It is about approaching problems differently. Humans are curious, willing to observe, learn, and take risks with caution. That is why the sword responded to me." Xylar, who had remained mostly silent, finally spoke. Then, "The sword does not test strength alone. It tests character. Perhaps we have much to learn from humans." Ethan smiled. "Exactly. True strength is not measured by muscle or power. It is measured by patience, understanding, and courage. Those who rush or demand often fail. Those who observe, learn, and act with respect succeed." The night deepened and the twin moons cast silver light over the temple and its hidden chambers. The aliens, once arrogant and impatient, now followed Ethan with quiet respect, realizing that humans had achieved something extraordinary, not through raw force but through wisdom, patience, and courage. Ethan paused at a central chamber where a massive projection displayed Zephyria's landscape, with glowing markers indicating hidden resources, ruins, and ancient energy sources. He placed the sword on a stand in the center, and it pulsed softly, connecting to the projection, as if validating the discoveries. "This sword," Ethan explained, "is not just a weapon. It is a guide, a teacher, and a test. It chooses who can access knowledge and rewards those who act with wisdom and courage." The aliens, for the first time, looked at humans in a new light. Strength was not always the ultimate measure. Curiosity, patience, and courage were equally powerful, and humans had proven that in a way none of them had expected. Xylar stepped closer, placing a hand on the pedestal. "Then, perhaps we can work together. There is much we can learn from humans." Ethan nodded. "That is the spirit. Strength is important, yes, but it is understanding, courage, and respect that make civilizations endure. As the night drew on, the aliens explored the temple alongside Ethan, each discovering the value of patience, observation, and insight. The sword had proven more than a challenge. It had revealed the true potential of humans. Not in brute force, but in courage, wisdom, and the ability to approach challenges thoughtfully. Ethan looked at the glowing sword one last time that night, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Lifting it had been only the beginning. Now humans had proven that they could not only face challenges but unlock knowledge that even advanced alien civilizations had failed to access. The aliens gathered outside, looking up at the stars. They were silent, humbled, and reflective. Humans, they realized, had a power that was often underestimated, the power of insight, patience, and courage. Ethan smiled, knowing that the journey was far from over. Zephyria held many secrets yet, and with the sword as a guide, humans could uncover them, not with violence or domination, but with intelligence, courage, and understanding. The night on Zephyria was calm, but it felt alive with possibilities. The sword pulsed softly in its pedestal, a reminder that true worth came from balance, respect, and courage, and that humans had just begun to show what they were capable of. The first light of dawn touched Zephyria, casting golden hues over the forested valleys and crystal mountains. The ancient temple stood silently in the clearing, the sword resting calmly on its pedestal, its soft blue glow reflecting the early sunlight. Ethan Drake stood before it, gazing at the intricate carvings one last time. The journey had been long, but the sword had proven more than a test of strength. It had revealed the extraordinary potential of humans. The alien crew gathered around him, still in awe of what they had witnessed over the past days. Xylar, the Rilnar warrior, stood quietly, his massive arms folded across his chest. The Orcs hovered nearby, their wings twitching nervously but with respect, and the Cathari murmured in their clicking language, analyzing the lessons they had learned. Ethan turned to face them. "Zephyria has taught us that strength alone is not enough," he said softly. "Courage, patience, understanding, and respect are just as important. Those who rush or act without thought will fail. Those who learn, observe, and act with care can achieve great things." The aliens looked at him with a mixture of admiration and humility. They had always believed in raw power, but humans had shown them a different path. One where insight and courage could succeed where brute force could not. Xylar stepped forward, his deep voice resonating across the clearing. "You have shown us, human, that your kind is remarkable. Not because you are stronger than us, but because you see challenges in ways we cannot. Perhaps it is time we rethink how we measure worth." Ethan nodded. "It is not about being better, it is about approaching the universe with curiosity, courage, and respect. These qualities allow us to face challenges and unlock knowledge that others might overlook." The sword pulsed softly, almost as if it agreed. Its faint glow bathed Ethan and the aliens in a serene light, and the temple seemed alive with ancient energy. The artifacts and devices in the hidden chambers had revealed secrets of Zephyria's civilization, knowledge of energy sources, advanced tools, and lessons in harmony between technology and nature. Humanity had accessed these secrets, not by force but by patience, observation, and courage. The Cathari scholar approached Ethan, their 6 eyes wide with curiosity. "Your kind, humans, you possess a combination of insight and bravery that even we have rarely seen. You honor knowledge, yet you act boldly when needed. We underestimated you." Ethan smiled. "Humans are curious by nature. We explore, we observe, and we act when the time is right. Strength is useful, but intelligence, courage, and patience are just as powerful." Xylar stepped closer to the pedestal, his massive hands resting gently on the stone. "Then perhaps it is time to work together," he said thoughtfully. "There is much we can learn from humans and much we can share." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. The universe is vast, and no species can know it all alone. Collaboration, respect, and shared knowledge will allow us to achieve far more than any of us could individually. As the aliens began to understand, the temple's energy seemed to respond. The sword pulsed brighter, projecting faint lines of light that connected the hidden chambers and devices, showing pathways and resources across Zephyria. It was as if the sword itself was acknowledging the new alliance forming, a symbol of cooperation between humans and aliens, guided by respect, courage, and wisdom. The Orcs flapped their wings lightly, stepping closer to Ethan. "We have long valued strength," one said softly. "But humans have shown us that there are other paths to greatness. Perhaps it is time we follow your example." Ethan placed a hand on the sword, feeling its energy pulse gently in response. "Strength has its place," he said, "but true greatness comes from balance of mind, heart, and action. That is why this sword responded to me, and that is why we can now use its guidance to uncover Zephyria's secrets responsibly." The aliens nodded. A sense of unity began to form among them. Humans were not conquerors. They were collaborators, explorers, and thinkers. Their courage and curiosity had opened doors that no alien had ever accessed, and the universe would now recognize their unique potential. Ethan led the crew through the hidden chambers one last time, explaining what each device and artifact could teach them. The aliens listened intently, their skepticism replaced with admiration. The sword had not only tested humans, it had shown the value of patience, insight, and courage in ways no alien could have imagined. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher, casting bright light over the temple and clearing. Ethan knew it was time to leave Zephyria, but he also knew that humanity's journey had only begun. With the sword's knowledge and the lessons they had learned, humans could face challenges across the stars that others might shy away from. He turned to the aliens. "Zephyria has much to teach us all, but it is also time for humans to continue exploring. We will return and we will share what we learn. Together we can achieve more than any one species could alone." The aliens nodded in agreement. Xyler extended his massive hand, which Ethan shook firmly. "Humans have proven themselves," Xyler said. "We will not forget this lesson. Your courage, patience, and insight have earned our respect." Cathari Scholar clicked softly in acknowledgement. "We will remember this day. Humans approach challenges differently, and it is a strength we can learn from. The sword has chosen well." Ethan smiled. He glanced one last time at the sword, now resting silently on its pedestal, its soft glow fading as the temple basked in daylight. "The sword is more than a test," he said quietly. "It is a reminder that courage, patience, and understanding will always lead to discovery and success." The aliens began to depart, leaving Ethan alone with the sword for a moment. He touched the hilt lightly, feeling the energy pulse softly in response. He understood now that lifting the sword had been only the first step. Its true value lay in what it could teach, what secrets it could reveal, and how it could inspire respect, courage, and collaboration across civilizations. As he returned to the Odyssey, the alien crew followed with newfound respect for humans. The ship's engines hummed softly, lifting off from Zephyria and into the vast expanse of space. Ethan gazed out at the stars, feeling a quiet satisfaction. Humanity had proven its worth, not through domination, but through intelligence, patience, and courage. News of their success would spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations would learn that humans were not just explorers. They were thinkers, collaborators, and leaders capable of feats that required more than strength. They had faced the ultimate test, and they had succeeded in a way that inspired respect and cooperation. In the days that followed, the aliens shared their observations with other worlds. Stories of a human lifting the ancient sword and unlocking Zephyria's secrets spread quickly. Humans became known not for conquest or violence, but for ingenuity, courage, and insight. Across star systems, beings began to see humanity as a species capable of great achievements, a species that could solve problems, uncover mysteries, and work alongside others for mutual benefit. Ethan, meanwhile, continued to explore. The sword remained on Zephyria, guarding its secrets, but he carried with him the lessons it had imparted. Patience, respect, courage, and understanding were more valuable than raw power. And with these qualities, humanity could face challenges that others could not even imagine. The Odyssey glided through the stars, leaving Zephyria behind, but its lessons were etched deeply into the hearts of both humans and aliens. The sword had not only tested strength, it had tested character, and humanity had passed not because of muscle, but because of mind, heart, and courage. As they traveled onward, Ethan gazed out at the infinite stars, feeling the weight of the universe and the potential of humans within it. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and mysteries, but now humans had proven that they could rise to any test. Other civilizations might doubt, fear, or underestimate them, but time and deeds would show their true worth. And somewhere, on Zephyria, the ancient sword pulsed softly, a quiet reminder of the trial, the knowledge, and the courage that had unlocked it. The legacy of the planet, once hidden for millennia, was now shared through human understanding, opening doors not only to knowledge, but also to a future of respect and collaboration across the stars. Ethan smiled faintly, knowing this was only the beginning. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars, not through dominance, not through violence, but through intelligence, courage, and respect. And the universe, vast and full of unknown wonders, had taken notice. The twin moons of Zephyria disappeared, behind the horizon as the Odyssey accelerated into the cosmos. A new chapter had begun, not just for humans, but for all species who had witnessed their courage. And humanity's journey, guided by curiosity and courage, would continue. A shining example of what the human spirit could achieve in the vast universe.